Good morning, friends. Welcome back to Up the Winding Lane. I'm Chrissy, and we're going to talk about a very versatile and well-known plant today, or I hope it's well-known. It may not be, and you may not realize where you can find it really easily. We're going to talk about yarrow. Can you see those little feathery leaves that look fernish? Well, that is yarrow. So this yarrow is actually in my garden because I transplanted it, but I actually found it in my yard, and I'm going to show you where I found it in just a second. So the Latin name, if I can pronounce this right, for yarrow is Achillea millefolium, and it is actually millefolium, I believe, stands for all of the tiny leaves, like a million leaves on those. They look like feathers, it's because they have tiny, tiny little leaves. Now, the Achilles part, the Achillea, is actually talks about how it used to be called, let me look here, soldier's woundwort. And so soldiers used to look for it in fields whenever they were out marching or whatever. If they had a cut or whatever it might be, they could use it, they could chew it up, and they could place it on that cut and actually stops the bleeding. It's actually recommended. You're really supposed to clean it really well because yarrow can stop the bleeding so quickly that it can trap bacteria if it's not cleaned well. So some of the other common names for yarrow is bad man's plaything, bloodwort, devil's nettle, milfoil, old man's pepper, soldier's woundwort, and thousand weed. Of course, the soldier's woundwort comes from the story I just told you. Achillea actually comes from Achilles, which says that he was, it's a really short story, that he was dipped in the water by his heel, by his mother, and there was yarrow growing all around that it made him like invincible, except for his heel, which we know is the Achilles tendon, but that he would use that as well for his soldiers. That is not really, I guess, kind of like a myth or whatever, but that is where it gets its name from. Now my yarrow just flowered and actually died off, so this is what I cut. I'm hoping that it will grow again. I'm going to go show you in the yard though where I found it at, but this would be all these little seed pods, so I can actually save these and spread the yarrow wealth. Now it seems to grow kind of like the comfrey. I cut all this off and now it's all back again, and I'm hoping the yarrow does the exact same thing. So some of the good things about yarrow and what you can use them for, you can actually use this for an infusion. You can tincture this. You can also dry it and encapsulate it. You could also make like a infused oil with it. You could make salves with it. So if you've watched my comfrey video, you could actually make a yarrow salve like that. You could mix some herbs as well and give some more beneficial, but just the yarrow itself is really good. So if you're out, you could chew some up and put it on a wound if you really wanted to. Just make sure it's clean first. Now the one thing about yarrow is that it is bitter, so if you want to infuse it, you definitely want to add some more herbs that are a little bit tastier when you're infusing it, because you don't want necessarily that bitter. But it is a digestive aid and a diaphoretic, so that is why it is bitter. But so you can actually dry this. I will probably be freeze drying some of it. You could dehydrate it as well, and then you can powder it and you can use that in wounds and such. As always though, make sure that you clean those wounds really well. It's also good for nosebleeds. It will stop nosebleeds. Now, make sure you do not take any of this as medical advice, because I am not a doctor, so make sure you do your own research for sure. So the diaphoretics like yarrow are often recommended to reduce a fever by helping a person produce sweat. Yarrow is also effective first aid remedy used to stop bleeding internally and externally. So we did talk about that a little bit. Now these can be a creamy white. They can also be in other colors. I've seen them as well. But as far as I know, the creamy white is what you find like out in the wild. So we're gonna walk out here in the yard to where I found the yarrow. I didn't actually know it was in the yard until we just didn't mow for a couple or so weeks. And then things start growing up and you're like, oh, that looks interesting. And with the app on my phone, I scanned it just in case, because I kind of knew what it was because I'd seen yarrow before, and sure enough, that's what it was. So we had these cedar posts right here We had one here and one on the other side of the barn for a wedding, and we removed those and put these trees here, which is a pecan tree, but if you'll look underneath that, that's what was growing. So that is yarrow. Tiny, tiny little feathery leaves. Now this is actually growing up in other places in the yard as well. So it does, it says it is a creeping plant. So it does put off like little umbrella flowers, I guess, tiny little flowers. So it probably does spread pretty easily with all those little seeds. So that is definitely not an issue. So if you find it, let it grow a little bit, mark it with a stake or something, and then you can either harvest from that, leave it right where it's at, or you can plant it in a protected space where it can grow larger if you would like. Totally up to you. But I think it's really cool that we can find things like this in our backyard, and that's what I'm going to focus on, is finding some things that you can find in your backyard and use. So I'm going to show you one other thing that has nothing to do with this really quickly that I just saw and I'm really excited about. This has nothing to do with yarrow, but this is called curly dock, and I'm actually going to go grab a baggie because I'm going to save this. I have read that you can actually use this to grind it up as flour. I mean, how cool is that to have a flour substitute in my backyard? Oh, and here's another one that has nothing to do with what I was talking about that I wanted to show you too. This one I just learned, this is called wild lettuce, and you can tincture it and use it very carefully. But I'm going to leave this one for right now. I've got some things to do, we've got places to go, and so then I think when I get back I'm going to tincture it. So pretty excited, but first I'll have to dry it, I think. Yep, I think I want to dry it first and then I'm going to tincture it. Okay, so I had some other stuff to share with you and totally forgot about it. So I'm going to try to insert this where it would make the most sense because I'm actually back in the greenhouse. But I would suggest getting a good book. This is one that I have. I have some other ones. You can find them used on Amazon. No need to buy them new. I just kind of keep a list of the books I would like, and then I find the cheapest one that's in good condition and get that one. I don't mind if it has writing or highlighting in it, but yarrow is also an anti-inflammatory herb, and it's used for GI. It is used as like I mentioned earlier, a digestive aid. And it's good for bruises and pain. Just gonna go over some of this. It's also good. The essential oil is used in aromatherapy, and it relieves colds and flu. It's good for heart disease and high blood pressure. Now, of course, always do your own research on this. Do not take my word for it. But yarrow is used in teas, which we talked about earlier. It can also be made into poultices and aromatherapy oils. It is easily purchased, of course, in bulk, but if you can find it in your backyard, that is even better because it's growing right where you are. So if you're, like I said, if you're using it to treat any kind of wound, you definitely want to clean the affected area and be careful before applying the yarrow because it seals the wound so quickly that it can seal in that bacteria. And because of that, so yarrow should not be used on large, deep infected wounds because it will seal those in. And if you have to put it too far in, it could probably actually seal some of itself in there, and that would cause bacteria and cause infection. So you don't want to use it in deep cuts or deep open wounds that are infected or just really deep. You definitely want to go to have that checked out by a medical professional. So it's also a uterine stimulant. So although it's not been proven to cause miscarriage, you definitely want to avoid it if you are pregnant or lactating. So just always be careful and pay attention and read about your herbs and do your research before you try them. All right, we're gonna walk out here to finish that because I just got stung on the thumb by a wasp. He did not like me in there, and I don't appreciate him taking over my greenhouse. Okay, so I was talking about you definitely want to find it on your own or in your backyard because it is an unusual plant as it adapts itself to new surroundings easily. So its chemical compositions change readily in response to changes in the environment. So it says for this reason it's important to use yarrow from the same source every time to get reliable results. So if you find it in your yard and you leave it there, then use it there. Or if you want to move it to a protected area, then that would work. And then that way you get consistent results and you use that same. I hope you enjoyed this really short herbal video. I think I will focus on things that you can find in your yard. If you would like other things, just comment below. Or if you have something maybe that you would like me to do a video on, comment that as well. I am learning along with you, so I'm really excited to use what God has provided for us in our backyards and in our forests. I think it's amazing and it's so cool. So be sure to like and subscribe, and don't forget to be lovely lights today.